Today I'm going to show you how you can upgrade the head unit in your car so you can have this Android tablet style head unit. Now this here is an Atoto S8 Ultra, and because it's basically an Android tablet, you can install many different apps on it just like you can on your phone. Of course, it also comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and this will make a huge upgrade, especially to an older vehicle, because it brings a lot of connectivity and a lot more modern features that you don't normally get. So here we are inside of my Toyota Sienna, and you can see I've already got a doubled-in 7-inch Atoto unit inside of here, but it looks pretty small in the dashboard, so we're going to upgrade that. I'm first going to show you how to remove this from the vehicle. Just start at the bottom here by removing this trim. Oh shoot, probably broke something there. So I'm going to disconnect that. I'm going to unscrew the shifter hand, pull off this trim piece over here, and then now the HVAC panel will come off and take off this little wire right here. Then underneath here you got 1, 2, 3, and 4 10mm bolts to remove, and this whole thing should just lift right out. Now back here we're going to be disconnecting the main harness, steering wheel controls, reverse camera, and the antenna from the head unit, and get this out of here. Inside the vehicle, these are the two main plugs you're going to need, the standard Toyota connectors that connect up to your Metro wiring harness. In addition, I've also got another plug here that connects to the steering wheel controller. So here's the stereo removed. I am going to need to save these brackets as well as this fascia over here, but if you are buying the kit brand new, all you got to do is remove the stock radio by removing the 4 screws going around the side. Now I'll remove the radio and take the vents and put it away, and I'm going to remove the screws from the side here and remove that radio. So I've got the old unit removed. Here are all the components that you're going to need in order to install this radio. First thing is this wiring kit here. I'm also going to be reusing my access steering wheel controller, as well as this harness that's Toyota specific, as well as the double DIN bracket kit. I'm going to be leaving a link with all these part numbers and links in the description below, so check it out. So the head unit I'm going to be installing is the Atoto S8 Ultra Plus. This is the quote-unquote new version. I'm also going to be installing the cameras and the OBD reader. Now the S8 is their high-end model. It's got fancy stuff like gesture control. It's got Wi-Fi hotspot capability, of course Bluetooth and Android Auto, and it's got 360 camera, built-in dash cam. We're going to test all that out. This one's got a giant 10-inch screen, but it fits within a double DIN bay, so it'll be interesting to see how that fits in the vehicle. Now Atoto has sent me this review, so if you're interested, check the links down in the description below if you want to pick up one of these from Amazon. Now besides the head unit in the box, you got the wiring harness, which we're going to solder up against our Toyota specific harness. We've got our Wi-Fi antenna, 4G antenna, because you can put a SIM card in this thing. We've got our GPS antenna, because you can do offline GPS maps. We've got an external microphone to make your voice a little clearer. We got 4 USB cables over here. Each one of them have their own function. A little front camera cable, some brackets, and of course the stuff you never read, which is like the instructions. Oh, there's also a screen protector. Looking at the back here, of course we got our pre-outs for audio out and audio input, and video inputs for the front and rear cameras and subwoofer. We've got an SPDIF that goes directly to the amplifier if you want a nice clean signal. We've got antennas for the GPS, the 4G, the Wi-Fi, and your AM/FM radio. There's 2 USB jacks over here for those 4 cables I showed you. And then there's a specific video input for the front dash cam that I'm going to test out with this. And of course the main power plug over here, microphone input, and infrared input per steering wheel controls. Now this screen's got a lot of adjustability. You can move it in and out or tilt it up and down. By the way, here's the SD card slot, USB, as well as the SIM card slot that goes into here. So just to demonstrate, if I remove these 2 outside screws here, I'm then able to move it in and out. And then furthermore, if I remove the middle screw here, it'll allow me to remove the screen itself altogether. And that's so that we can get it installed in the vehicle. Now what I like about this is that they've actually put a proper connector here. On previous units you actually had to disconnect the ribbon cable, but this is a lot easier with a plug. Now on the side here there's 2 screws. This one's for tilt and this one is for height adjustment. So if I remove this pair, you'll see that I'll be able to slide this up and down in order to get the correct height position for where I need it to be. And finally, if you look in there, we've got the tilt adjustment. So if I remove that screw over there, I'm now able to tilt it up and down depending on the position in my dashboard. The only thing is you can't really tilt it left and right towards the driver. Honestly, this thing's more complicated than a TV mount. It actually looks pretty empty in there. This could have probably been a single DIN unit for all you know. So I'll just take my Metro kit, put that double DIN radio inside of there. I'm just going to tighten up the supplied hardware in here. Now in terms of the alignment, this thing has to pretty much be flush because you need to be able to access these screw holes over here and your USB ports along the side. So now I've reinstalled the screen back onto here. I'm going to tighten down these screws. Now I can bring in the vent and we can replace the 4 screws. Let's go ahead and snug these down. Now moving towards the wiring harness, here's the metric kit. It's got a bunch of colored wires that you could use here to figure out which one is which. The Atoto unit comes with them pre-labeled, but they're pretty much color match. You'd solder them all together and put some heat shrink. The only ones we're not going to connect yet are the reverse trigger wire for the camera, and make sure you ground your parking brake cable so you can watch Netflix while driving. So just as an example, on the metric kit over here, I've got a gray with a black wire. That means the right front negative wire, which is this one over here on the Atoto harness. So I'm going to go ahead and put this heat shrink on here and then twirl these together, and then I'm going to drop some solder on this connection. Go ahead and put some solder on that connection between the two wires there. Make sure it's nice and secure. So here I've got my wiring harness all soldered up, and I put some heat shrink over it. Now the access steering wheel control module requires 12 volts, so I've tapped off of the positive and the negative on this side, and the input for that is this 3.5mm jack, which I'm going to plug in here. So when I go in the vehicle, I've got my standard Toyota connection harnesses as well as the steering wheel control harness to plug into the car. Alright, so here we are inside the vehicle. I'm going to plug in the Toyota harnesses. This over here. Now I'm just going to do a quick dry test. So I'm not going to plug in everything just as yet. I'm going to bring the head unit over here. I'm going to plug in this plug into the Atoto unit at the back here. So much wires back there. I'm going to sit in the dash so it connects. Alright, so this is going to be the first startup here. Alright, so now that I know it power's on, I'm going to peel this off. Probably the best time to put the screen protector on while it's still clean. I hate this because I'm not a very tedious person at all. I'll peel this off to see how my bad work. Alright, so I've adjusted the height of this unit over here so that it doesn't really hit when I shift in and out of park. I've also tilted it down quite a bit so that it's facing me a little bit better. Okay, I am going to be removing this back here so we can run some more wires at the back there. Now one note is I did have to modify this bracket a little bit by cutting off a small piece in order to get this thing to tilt downward. That's one thing they could definitely improve on, to give it a tilt down option for vehicles like this where the screen is a little bit up higher. Really only meant to tilt upwards for vehicles that have it sitting down here. So I've previously tapped off the video signal coming from the small stock reverse camera, and now I put it onto this camera here, but you can see, and because it's so blown up, the resolution is really bad. So let's install a new camera to make this work a little bit better. So this is the backup camera that I got from Atoto. This specifically is going to work with their 360 camera, so you can get a bird's eye view when you're backing up. Now inside this box you got this license plate bracket which we're going to mount the camera to. This is the camera itself. It just has a standard video output. Then we have this wire over here. Now this wire's got power and video, which is what's going to plug into the camera over here. Then over on the other side we're going to run the long wire down to the front of the vehicle where we have the video and the reverse trigger. Of course the camera is going to need power, so we're going to have to wire it to the backup light. Additionally, we do have a calibration mat so we can get the 360 stitching to work properly. I do have another video on how backup cameras are installed, so you might want to check that out. So I'm just going to go through this real quick on this van. So the backup camera's got to be mounted somewhere underneath here, so in order to get to that we will have to remove all of these panels. You're going to also need to remove this panel and run the wire through this loom over here down the headliner to the front. Alright, so now it's time for you guys to watch me break upholstery clips. Probably cause this van to rattle even more if it's not rattling enough already. In order to remove the trunk garnish, we got 2 bolts over here, 2 bolts on the handle area, and 2 clips over on this side. I don't know about you guys, but I don't really like to mount this on the license plate itself if possible, because it's going to interfere my hand when I have to go in there and press the button in order to open the hatch. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount it off center over here. Just put 2 little screw holes here and mount it nice and secure. So it's kind of like the opposite of this side. And then I'm going to run my wire through the beeper switch over here. It's got plenty of space inside of here where I can drill a hole going through this way. That does mean I will have to cut and join this wire and resolder it back on the inside of the trunk, but at least that's better than drilling a gigantic hole for these heads to pass through. Alright, we're going to have to cut this video cable here, and then we'll push this through the switch and resolder it. Alright, I got my holes drilled there. I'm going to be routing this wire back in through here, and then back in through this hole over here to the back of the trim piece, and then I can line this up with the 2 holes over there. Make sure the camera is relatively straight, and then now I can use the 2 supplied screws here to screw this in. It's plastic, it doesn't have to be too tight. So here what I've got so far, the wire is mounted and it runs over here in through this little switch over here, and here's where I'm going to solder up and make my connections. This part's going to be going in the trunk, and you can see it's weather sealed off. Of course, I always got to forget the heat shrink. So while the video wires are going to attach to this cable over here, on the other end of that wire we have to get power to it and ground. So we're going to tap in over here on the vehicle's wiring harness. This here is the reverse light and the harness where it attaches. These heads are too big to pass through, so I'm going to cut the wire and we're going to have to resolder it in the trunk. Then I have to take the long end of my wire here to the harness, and then we'll run that up and into the trunk. Now inside of here there's 4 wires, so I'm going to solder these up. The 4th one is actually a ground which is shielded, so I'm not sure if you're supposed to even solder these properly. Soldering is done, now it's just time to heat shrink that. And so here we've got the camera installed on the trim piece over here. We're going to go ahead and install that. And I'm plugging this in. The 2 reverse wires are this red one here and the white one, so we're going to hook up the ground and the reverse signal respectively and solder that in. Seriously, T-taps would have been a lot easier here. So now I've got all the wires hooked up under the trunk here. I'm going to go ahead and run this down the headliner to the A-pillar. Before we close everything back up, just going to zip tie all these wires back together, because this trunk does move up and down, so we don't want any of the wires moving. I'm going to go ahead and reinstall all these panels. So I'm just going to go along the headliner, along the length of the vehicle, and tuck this wire in. Now there shouldn't be any issues with the side airbags because they're so powerful, it's just going to rip this wire right out. So as I've reached the front A-pillar here, I'm just going to run it down the dashboard and then across to the head unit. So I've got the wire pulled through here. It is going to require constant power, so I'm going to use this T-tap over here and tap into that. This other one here goes to the head unit's pink wire for the reverse trigger, and this is going to go to the back of the RC plug for the rear video input. Now Atoto also sent me this OBD II reader, which is handy if you want to read engine data on the touchscreen, so I'm going to plug that in. I'm also going to plug in the microphone. I'm going to run the wires for the GPS antenna, the 4G antenna, as well as the Wi-Fi antenna, so we'll get back after that. In addition, I've also got the Atoto dash cam over here. This one's going to record to an SD card internally built, but you can also access it from the head unit if you need to save or review anything. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this to the dash and run this wire down to the head unit. Well, it was quite tedious, but I ran all of my wires through the vehicle to the head unit area here. One thing they could improve on is by making an integrated antenna on the back of this head unit here where it faces the windshield, as opposed to running it all the way through the dashboard. I'm just going to go ahead and start plugging in all these antennas and wiring harnesses. Got my GPS, got my Wi-Fi, got my microphone, got my power, I got my FM radio, AM radio, I got my USB, I have my steering wheel control module, I got the backup camera. So now I've turned it on to verify that the system works and everything's okay. I'm going to go ahead and button up this dashboard, clean up some of the wiring, and then we'll have a closer look at some of the features of the S8 Ultra. Just going to go ahead and replace all the 10mm bolts and hold the stereo in. Next I'm going to replace the climate control module. Never get these kits to sit flush. And then replace this piece of trim here. Tuck that in there. I did try one of those female ports that you could put on the cigarette lighter, but it did cause my Android Auto and Apple CarPlay to bug up. So instead I'm just running all my wires through this hole over here and then plug them in as I need. So now I've got everything installed and working, we're going to go ahead and check out some of the features. Alright, I got the calibration mat centered up behind the vehicle. So one of the first things you got to do is calibrate the rear camera. So we're going to go ahead and pop it in reverse. Then click here 6 times and then click the middle to get the setting. Then we're going to go to vehicle parameters, type in the width and the length of the vehicle, which I've already done, and then hit calibration. Calibration succeeded. So now we can center the image. My center line lines up to where the dots are. Now we're going to go to crop, and we're going to take off some from the edges here because those are not really needed. And I'll bring this down here so we can see the back of the vehicle. And with those settings saved, you can see that the mat here is now in the center over here, and my backup camera is cropped. It does have a fisheye lens to it, which I don't really like. I prefer to have more of a flatter image. Now one of the reasons why I chose this is because it has that 360 top-down camera, so let's check that out. Alright, so we're going to try the reverse camera here. You can see that the images are going to stitch together as I'm reversing. Alright, I'm going to start to go into the spot over here. Start to turn. And you can see they're all stitching together. I'm trying to get my vehicle into those 2 lines. There's also a vehicle directly behind me, so it shows me that over there. Now that I'm straight and between the 2 lines, I can correct and get myself right inside of there. I do have these distance markers which help a lot. Okay, this thing will make a really nice picnic mat from when you want to get away from the wife and just go to the beach. Now one of the biggest fears when I was choosing this tablet-like touchscreen is how it's going to fit in my vehicle. I did have to leave enough clearance during installation to get the shifter to move properly, which means that the whole screen had to move up, which means that it kind of blocks my information screen. If I'm sitting over here or in the driver's seat, I kind of have to move my head around it. I was also worried about how the bracketry would look like, especially if you're a passenger and you're hopping in from the side right here, but I really like how they painted it black now, so it kind of blends in, and that's not much of an issue. In terms of the screen itself, it is actually bright and has a decent enough viewing angle. However, if you catch it at the right angle, it does have a bit of glare in the daytime. At nighttime though, I think it is a little too bright. Even if you dial this all the way down, it's still a little annoying at night. Now you can also put it on eye comfort mode over here, so it gives it that yellow tinge to make it a little easier for a longer drive. So far I've only tried quick charge in terms of the USB ports, and it's far from a quick charger. Using the same exact cable, it used to charge way faster in my Atoto F7 that I took out of here, and my S22 isn't really that old. Now another one of the cool features this has is gesture control. Now I did set up some of these, but because you have so many of them set up, you gotta be careful because the sensor is right here and you could easily activate something when using the touchscreen. So far I've only set up the volume. So you can see as I swirl my finger over here, I can increase it and I can decrease it. Now it does work, you just have to be a little finicky with it. It's kind of one of those features that's cool to have, especially during those old COVID days when you don't want to touch stuff. Now one of the biggest problems with the Atoto S8 is that it doesn't work with my brother's old toothbrush here, and that's kind of disappointing. So taking a look at some of this head unit's main features here, this is basically an Android 10 tablet that's stuck to your dashboard. Once you've got internet on here, either through Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or the data SIM card, you can pretty much do anything like you can with your phone. So I can go to the Play Store, I can install all these different apps over here, and I can actually use them. So for example, YouTube, which is going to be my favorite one. Once I'm logged in here, you can see I can actually watch videos on here while I'm driving, even though it's probably illegal, which is pretty nice. You can't do that when you're inside Android Auto, as long as you have that Wi-Fi connection. I can also go onto Chrome here and look things up on the internet if I need to. Now in terms of the sound quality, I'm not an audiophile, so I can't really tell you too much. You can also be old school like me and listen to the radio. You can see I'll use the gesture controls here, slightly raise the volume. And I really like that quick mute button over there in case your parents are trying to contact you on your wife's phone because you're not picking up. Now the touchscreen sensitivity is pretty nice here, nice and fast. It also has multi-touch, so you can swipe up and you can close other apps that you have over here. You also can go this way with 3 fingers and that way, so that you can raise and lower the volume. Again, these are not things that I'm going to use on a daily basis because I have nice hard clicky buttons over here which I really like, and I got a nice home button over here and then a mute or power down button which you can turn the screen off if you press and hold. Now if you go into the equalizer settings, you can see there's a lot of different options in here. You can tune individually which frequencies you want in and out, and you can do that for both the front and the rear separately, which I think is pretty neat. I can also tune in the loudness as well as just reset it to default. Here we have time correction, which is going to delay the amount of time that it takes for the sound to get to the driver, so you hear it all in synchrony. Finally over here we have bass boost, which you can do for front and rear, and then of course your standard sound field for left, right, front and rear. And then we've got the crossover here which you can tune as well. Overall, it's quite a lot of features if you're really into that stuff. I'm just the kind of guy who's going to reset it. Now I did have one gripe with Bluetooth 2, the secondary connection. I did have a couple of friends come in here and try to connect to that so they can jam their tunes. However, I'd have to disconnect from mine, which means that I can't have my Android Auto working at the same time they want to jam their tunes, so that kind of sucked. This is the Atoto OBD reader that they sent me. I've already got it connected here, and I haven't really configured stuff, but you can attach a lot of different gauges here. Here you can see the tachometer, which is currently connected. I can also read fault codes and do a lot of other information related to the ECU and have a nice digital display over here. I think it's a pretty good feature. Now the radio interface is fairly straightforward. It does have an AM/FM tuner. You can also sort it by the genre that you want. You can also do just manual tuning over here. When you find the station you want, just press and hold and it will save it for you. Now if you are in a different location, make sure you set this to your current area. Mine is USA and Canada. Otherwise you'll never be able to find your radio stations. Taking a look at the dash camera, it does have its own DVR app built in here. And you'll see once it's loaded up, at the top here it's flickering, which means that it is recording. You can also choose to take a picture or turn off the microphone. It is tinted blue because I put it a little too high up on the windshield in the blue area. If I go over here, I can review my recordings. So you can see I can play back something from a little while ago. This is all stored on the internal storage. And here you can see a video of me driving here. The video is nice and clear. And you can also lock these files here in case you don't want it to get erased by accident, in case you do capture something like a chicken crossing the road. So you can see I'm driving here with my DVR, and I can actually drive through the screen here. It's pretty cool. Now you can also do a live view of the rear camera while you're driving, so you can see who's really tailgating you. Now it is a nice fisheye lens, so much so you can also make out my license plate, which is almost 180 degrees from it. However, it does give you kind of a warped perception when you're backing up exactly how much space you have left. I think it brings you a little too close. Also at night, if only headlights are pointing at you, there's obviously going to be too much glare and you can't make anything out. What I do wish though is that you could turn this into a rear dash camera. That would be awesome if Atoto wants to add that as another feature. Now I did have that access controller for the steering wheel control, so you can set that up over here. I was able to pair all but one button, which is good enough for me. It's a lot easier to pair than that old F7 Atoto radio I had in here. Now taking a quick look at some of the settings inside of here, very similar to any other Android setup. You've got your Wi-Fi and data usage over here. Then we go to the device, very simple. We've got our display, sound, location, Bluetooth, USB connections, and the storage. We've got 128 gigabytes of storage on this unit, plus we've got the USB cables, which you can attach a full SSD hard drive if you want. Finally, here's some of the apps that are already installed. There's this TPMS app, which you can get TPMS sensors to attach to this Atoto stereo. Now going into the general settings, these are mostly to do with the camera itself. You can see this one here is display front view after reversing, so that's if you're parallel parking going reverse into a spot and you want to go up and straight forward. It'll display the front camera. We don't have that one installed, but you would install that in the front of the bumper. Then we have our reverse camera static lines, which you can adjust. And just like any other tablet, we do have our other settings such as security and your login. Then in the system settings, you have your accessibility and time. Down at the bottom here, you can also change the startup logo, but this thing boots up fast enough that I don't even see that anyway. Just like any other Android, you do have a file manager over here, so you can install illegal APK files. And you've also got a gallery over here that you can view your pictures and videos, so you can be entertained while you're stuck in line at the border or something. Now one of the main reasons why you install these head units is because of the navigation system here. So you can see I've got the Google Maps app opened up here. I am tethered to my phone, so I do have live traffic updates, and you can see here it's a really nice map. I do like this app a lot better than the Android Auto one because it has multi-touch display, which does help quite a lot when you are driving. Now if I'm not tethered to my phone, I will have to download the maps for offline usage, so you just have to come here and type OK Maps, scroll to the area where you want to download. So let's say you want to download Oshawa, then click download, and it'll download in the background and save it onto the internal storage. Now the other main reason you get one of these is because of wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, where you just jump in the car and it's just ready for you to go with the previous songs or your maps or anything that you have on there. One thing to note though is that it uses Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to connect to this head unit, so it will actually take off the Wi-Fi tethering that I have connected to my phone right now when I click CarLink for it to connect. You see it'll just take about 30 seconds to read everything and connect, and then boom, just like that, I've already connected. I've got my map over here. Obviously you can see that I can't have multi-touch. You have to use this plus and minus sign over here, which is really annoying because it's hard to get to when you're driving and bumbling around. Now you do have your standard Android Auto apps such as your phone and your messages that'll show up. You got your notifications over here. Now your text messages, you can only respond using voice, and you're not allowed to use any video apps such as YouTube. So in essence, this is kind of limited, but it's also universal against any other stereo. So if you've got multiple cars and you jump in, you're gonna have everything set up the way you want it with all of your information on the screen. Now one quirk is that if your phone is connected and let's say you run out to the parts store to buy a turbocharger real quick while your wife and kid are waiting in the car, and then you come back to it, well, it doesn't really reconnect while this is being on. You kind of have to either turn this off or turn the Wi-Fi off on your phone and then reconnect. Now if you don't really need this gesture control system, the built-in SIM card, or the cool 360 stitching feature when you're backing up, you could jump down to the A6 Atoto, which is slightly smaller, but it's half the price. I will have a link down in the description so you can check that one out as well. Who knows, maybe Atoto can send me an A6 model so we can install that in my other vehicle and do a comparison video between the two. And that's a wrap on the Atoto S8 Ultra. I think it's a really good head unit with a lot of features, although it does have that premium price. My favorite features are of course the rear 360 camera while you're backing up, and of course it's got that built-in DVR, and the fact that you guys can watch my YouTube videos while I'm driving. Now I'm going to put links in the description below where you can buy one just like this. Make sure you follow me on Instagram for more behind the scenes footage, and subscribe for more videos just like this one. Yep, what he said, subscribe if you want to see more.